Hello, and thank you for joining this session on successful strategies for micro-segmentation. My name is Garrett Weber, and I am the Director of Solutions Engineering for Guardicore. Today, we're going to take about 30 minutes to cover some important points around preparing for a micro-segmentation project, some common pitfalls to avoid, and what to look for in the right solution. First, let's take a quick look at an overview of today's agenda. I'll briefly provide a more detailed overview of myself and my background, then we'll level set on what microsegmentation is, how it helps organizations prepare for and embrace the ongoing digital transformation, who is interested in microsegmentation and why, then how to prepare for and execute a microsegmentation project, including selecting the right solution and different operational models that we've seen customers use. Again, my name is Garrett Weber, and I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering for Guardicore. If you're not familiar with Guardicore, we're a leader in the microsegmentation space, helping our customers achieve software-defined microsegmentation for their data center and cloud environments. I've spent the bulk of my career working in cybersecurity in both the public and private sectors, including stints with healthcare and insurance organizations, as well as several years as a federal government employee. I've spent 12 years in the Air National Guard as a member of an elite network warfare squadron that worked closely with the Defense Information Systems Agency and the Air Force Computer Emergency Response Team. My unit provided various blue team capabilities ranging from vulnerability management and systems hardening to incident analysis and response. Now let's start by defining microsegmentation. Microsegmentation is a method of securing your most critical assets by using a software-defined segmentation technique that provides granular workload-based security, allowing organizations to control communication flows between individual systems within their environment. Much like traditional network segmentation, microsegmentation uses rules like access control list to define what traffic is allowed or denied. The difference between microsegmentation is it does this on a per workload basis, focusing on controlling east-west traffic to reduce the attack surface and restrict lateral movement within the data center and cloud environment. For example, let's take a typical 3-tier application, including a web tier, application tier, and a database tier. Microsegmentation allows you to define rules that allow only servers in the web tier can communicate with servers in the application tier, and only servers in the application tier can communicate with servers in the database tier. So if an attacker lands on a public-facing web server, there's no way for that attacker to move directly from the web server to a database server. That attacker's ability to move laterally throughout the environment is extremely restricted, and any attempt to move laterally can violate a rule and alert the organization to the breach that's occurred. Now, microsegmentation is a powerful tool and also allows organizations the flexibility to implement security policies consistently throughout the organization. And those policies can follow the workload throughout its life cycle. It allows organizations to embrace the digital transformation and implement a zero trust architecture, all while achieving compliance in their hybrid environment. Every organization is undergoing some form of a digital transformation. IT teams are focused on delivering applications and services at an increased rate and demand. In response to that, they've embraced new infrastructures, such as infrastructure as a service from cloud providers like AWS or Azure, and container technologies such as Kubernetes or OpenShift. These changes require a new way to segment the environment, as our reliance on VLANs and physical firewalls is no longer sufficient for these new infrastructures. So instead of managing policies across multiple tools, organizations embracing the digital transformation are using microsegmentation solutions to provide the necessary segmentation and security capabilities across these diverse infrastructures. I'm sure you can imagine an application deployed within your environment that has undergone a digital transformation and is now distributed across multiple infrastructures. It's common to see the front end of an application be hosted in a cloud provider. The application tier still running within a virtualized environment in your private data center, and the database is running within a co-located data center somewhere else. In order to segment and provide a consistent security policy across that application, organizations have turned to micro-segmentation. The moral of this slide is that you're not alone. Organizations in every vertical are implementing micro-segmentation solutions due to the flexibility of the software-defined approach. Whether you're segmenting your point-of-sale application, your electronic medical records, or intellectual property related to a secret recipe, micro-segmentation allows you to secure those critical assets and their data. Micro-segmentation has been very much embraced by organizations with strict compliance requirements that define a need for segmentation, such as PCI or SWIFT. We've definitely seen a trend in new compliance regulations and guidelines either requiring or recommending using a granular segmentation approach to protecting critical assets and data. As mentioned previously, organizations embarking on their digital transformation are also using micro-segmentation solutions to provide that consistent security policy across their disparate infrastructure. Now that we've defined micro-segmentation and we're all aligned on the topic, let's discuss preparing for a micro-segmentation project. First, it's important to define your organizational stakeholders. Micro-segmentation is a project that will require buy-in from various groups within the organization in order to be successful. Commonly, we see members of the security, network, infrastructure, and DevOps teams, along with various business unit and application owners as part of the core project team. Each group here will have its own core function within the project. Next, it's important to properly define your segmentation goals. Micro-segmentation solutions allow you to achieve various segmentation techniques, such as environment segmentation, where there's a need to separate development and production systems. Application isolation, where you're restricting access to an application from the users and other applications in the environment that can access it. And application microsegmentation, where you're controlling traffic down to the individual workloads within the application. Aligning the goals for the organization and the various teams will help you properly operationalize a solution and prioritize what segmentation goals should be achieved first. This will not only help you understand the appropriate segmentation techniques you'll use, but also select the right solution that is flexible enough to solve all your segmentation challenges. Next, it's important to have a solid understanding of your current and future infrastructure plans. For example, if you're currently a predominantly virtualized environment, but over the next 5 years, your organization will begin to move workloads to the cloud or to a containerized solution, making an investment in micro-segmentation solution that only supports virtualized environments will leave you looking for a new solution and beginning this process all over again as the environment begins to expand outside of your virtualized environment. Another key to preparing for the micro-segmentation project is identifying your tagging strategy for your workloads. Tags are used for grouping assets together, so you can apply the appropriate policy to them. For example, if your segmentation goal is to separate development systems from production systems, you'll want a tag that identifies each workload as either development or production. This will allow you to create policies that are applied to groups of systems instead of individual systems. Another example would be if you were trying to isolate your privileged access management system. Your tags that you're assigning should identify the core parts of that privileged access management system so you can apply the appropriate rules for the application isolation of that system. Your tagging strategy should align with your ultimate segmentation goals in order for you to be successful. Lastly, you should identify any necessary integrations and ensure that the solution you choose supports those integrations. For example, if you want to write incidents to a SIEM solution or a ticketing solution for your SOC team to respond to, Knowing what the right integration should be ahead of time will be critical to selecting the right solution. Also, a common integration is creating tags based on data within a CMDB inventory. This technique can expedite the tagging process, but in order to do it, you'll need to understand what your CMDB inventory is and what type of integrations it's capable of. That can then be aligned with the solution that you're selecting during your selection process. Most organizations struggle with the where do we begin question, unless it's already been dictated by the C-level. This process involves prioritizing segmentation needs with the help of the project stakeholders from the various parts of the organization. Prioritizing your segmentation needs may mean first addressing segmentation-related audit findings from a failed audit. We all know the most difficult thing to do in a PCI audit is properly scope and isolate the PCI environment. Or maybe you're going to start with securing your most critical applications. In this case, many organizations will start with securing their Tier 1 applications that are most critical to the business, then move to their Tier 2 applications, and finally their Tier 3. How you determine the criticality of those applications is typically done by working with the business unit to determine an application's importance to the business based on criteria such as the revenue it produces, dependencies from other applications, or just its overall usefulness to the business. Another approach is to start micro-segmenting parts of the environment that are least secure. We all have systems that are outdated, but we cannot patch them or update them because they're still critical to the business itself. We call these legacy systems, and these are typically great targets for micro-segmentation projects due to the reduction in risk that you'll receive once they are properly secured. One final technique is using a mix of different segmentation techniques based on the criticality of the application and its data. We've seen organizations choose to define application micro-segmentation policies on the individual workloads that make up their Tier 1 applications. This is as secure as they can make those applications. Then simply isolate a Tier 2 application based on what users and applications can access the application as a whole. And finally, simply segment Tier 3 applications based on the environment they are associated with, ensuring that development versions cannot connect directly to production versions of that application. So now in our experience, achieving microsegmentation has a handful of common challenges that are best addressed up front when planning for the project and selecting the right solution. The first challenge is achieving microsegmentation in the hybrid environments that we all now work in. The solution you choose should support applying a consistent security policy across your entire environment. Solutions that are just cloud native or only work in a virtualized environment will only provide microsegmentation for a portion of your environment, forcing you to manage policy within another tool to achieve full microsegmentation. The next challenge is the lack of visibility into east-west traffic. It's not likely that any person within your organization can explain how communication flows for a specific application or environment are expected to occur. Even your application owners can typically only identify a portion of the expected flows to and from their applications, but they'll miss core services such as authentication or monitoring systems that are maintained by other groups in the organization. In order to confidently create and apply policy, you need to be able to account for all application dependencies and flows. Granular visibility is critical to successfully achieving microsegmentation. Policy complexity is two parts. Imagine having to manage part of your policy in a security group that uses tags defined in the cloud provider to identify assets. Now imagine having to manage the other part of that policy in an on-premise only segmentation solution that uses different criteria from a CMDB inventory to tag assets and apply policy. It sounds messy and complicated, right? Normalizing your metadata that will be used for tags and finding a single solution that supports your entire environment will help streamline the policy creation and speed up your ability to microsegment the environment. The next challenge is dealing with the new world of DevOps and auto-scaling technologies. In this world, workloads are spun up and down on an as-needed basis, and new applications are deployed within minutes or hours instead of weeks or days or weeks. The speed of these processes is a challenge for microsegmentation because you need to ensure that your policies will be applied to these workloads quickly and consistently. A workload that is up for only 10 minutes needs the same security and controls as the workload that's up for 10 months. Lastly, the biggest challenge we see is actually the organization's ability to operationalize a microsegmentation solution because the vendor or the consulting organization that you're working with does not have a proven methodology for achieving microsegmentation. We've all purchased a product that was never deployed, probably at best we got half the value out of it than we expected, and at worst it became shelfware within 9 months of the purchase. Ensure that your vendor, your VAR, or your consulting organization has a proven methodology for helping you accomplish microsegmentation. Now that we've covered the challenges of achieving microsegmentation, let's discuss what to look for in the right solution. First, the best option is a solution that is platform and infrastructure agnostic. This ensures that regardless of the future changes to your environment, your microsegmentation solution and methodology will support those changes. Next, we discuss that achieving microsegmentation of east-west traffic requires granular visibility. This will help you map out your application dependencies so you can confidently apply policy. Beware of solutions that only solve part of this challenge or require you to purchase a second or third solution in their portfolio to receive this functionality. The ability to visualize and map out dependencies of an application are going to be core to your success in this project. Flexible deployment options is important for solving all of your segmentation challenges within your disparate environment. Look for a solution that can provide you with the flexibility to isolate a PCI environment in an on-premise environment just as easily as it would segment an application deployed in a cloud provider. When you're determining what types of systems you need to protect, you need to also determine the operating system versions that may be running to know whether something is a current version or a legacy system. You'll need your solutions to be flexible enough to cover all of those different options if you really want to achieve microsegmentation. The key to achieving segmentation and isolation is obviously the ability to take action and enforce policies that block bad or rogue connections from occurring. When evaluating a solution, ensure you understand whether the blocking takes place on the host or on the network. In a host-based scenario, it's also important to understand whether the solution performs its own blocking or if it leverages the OS firewall. In many cases, organizations have policies in place to disable the OS firewall, and using this solution may require you to enable that feature. Another important point relating to OS firewalls is the deprecation of IP tables that was recently announced. If your solution is reliant on IP tables on Linux operating systems, then you may need to look at a solution that does not have this reliance on a deprecated capability at this point. Lastly, and arguably the most important, select a solution that's future-proof, both from its ability to be agnostic to the infrastructure your workloads are deployed within, but also capable of keeping up with the DevOps processes that will be put in place as you continue down this road to achieving microsegmentation. Microsegmentation is a journey that will require some culture shifts in the way in which you've been achieving segmentation and securing your most critical assets. This change will not happen overnight, and the solution you choose should be along with you for the ride. Okay, now that we've selected our solution, how do we actually operationalize it? We typically see this done in ways that can be classified into these two approaches, the decentralized and the centralized model. In a centralized model, a technical team made up of members from the security, network, and infrastructure team owns the project and is responsible for tagging assets and defining policies. This process typically involves interviewing and working with application owners to ensure that their applications are properly scoped and tagged, and then the appropriate policies are applied. The benefit of this is that this team can determine how permissive policies can be and can also ensure that all applications receive a consistent security policy. The disadvantage is the speed with which this group can accomplish the microsegmentation, as they're usually a small group, and when we think of the process of interviewing application owners and applying policy to dozens or hundreds or thousands of applications, this can take a long time. This leaves gaps in the security posture, as you can only accomplish a few applications or environments at any given time. In the decentralized model, the security or network team typically owns the microsegmentation solution, but becomes more of a governance body. The governance group will oftentimes establish a guideline for policy requirements and will put a baseline of policies in place. Then the responsibility for scoping applications, identifying dependencies, and defining policy is shifted to the application owners and DevOps teams. This works well in organizations where speed is crucial and integration into the DevOps pipeline is most important. The disadvantage here is the focus on security and applying granular policies is often diluted by competing priorities. The governance body is then responsible for ensuring the appropriate policies are put in place on these applications throughout the microsegmentation lifecycle. If you found this topic interesting and you wish to learn more, here are some additional resources that you can review from Guardicore, Gartner, and Network World. All right, I'd like to thank everyone for their time today. I hope you found this session to be useful and relevant to your microsegmentation project, no matter what point you're in, whether you're in the early stages of identifying the need and the use cases and the problems you can solve, or if you're further down the road and you're starting to evaluate the right solution and looking to get ahead of the common pitfalls that you could fall into in a microsegmentation project. Again, my name is Garrett Weber. I'm the Director of Solutions Engineering for Guardicore. My email is here on the screen if you'd like to reach out to me to talk about this topic in more depth. It is garrett.weber@guardicore.com. And thank you for the time today. Best of luck in your microsegmentation project.